Hi, everybody. Welcome back to SaaS Founder Stories. My name is David Brennan, and today I have Rachel Liaw. She is the co-founder and CEO of Fuse Inventory. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Tell me a little bit about Fuse.
Yeah, so Fuse is an inventory optimization platform. We basically help mid-sized enterprise brands figure out, how much inventory they need to order, when they need to order, so that they're not buying too much, but they're also not buying too little. And we have a unique approach to this. So we obviously have our AI based forecasting, but we also have a full supply planning end to end supply chain system that follows after that. So making sure that you have full logistics coordination, all your unit costing measured, all the way down into the inventory like hits the warehouse. So that's a little bit about what we do.
Very cool. And so tell me the origin story. How did you start Fuse and how'd you get into it?
Yeah, so I actually started my career as a software developer. Like early on, I decided I would never do tech again. So, of course, now I'm running a tech company. And I restarted my career in the warehouse, just like packing boxes as an intern at a brand called KiwiCo, and worked my way up to become a supply chain manager there. Did everything from forecasting, planning, sourcing, fulfillment, production management, warehouse management, last mile fulfillment, reverse logistics, and just really kind of rolled up my sleeves, got into it, and thought, there's going to be like a more modern solution. We've got AI, we've got all of these great technologies, cloud softwares. Like, certainly, like someone will build this because at the time we were using just archaic software. And I actually started my own brand after KiwiCo called Parasol Co. And we made diapers and wipes for babies. So we had the softest, thinnest diapers in the world at the time. And I sourced everything, started supply chain from scratch, and actually built a custom inventory management system as part of our shopping cart. These were like the pre-Shopify days. So we built our own cart, we built our own inventory management system. And I was like, someone could use this. But, I was busy building that brand. And after a while, I was like, why are all these brands building their own custom systems? Because I was talking to other brands, partnering with them, doing like collaborations, and they're like, you have your own system. We'd love to use it. Like, we don't have one. We're using spreadsheets. And I really thought, okay, well, someone's going to build this. And finally, I just realized after many years, like no one was building it and I was going to build it. And so, Fuses is basically me building the software that I wanted as a brand founder, as a brand operator. A lot of these softwares that we currently use in supply chain were built before e-commerce even existed. Of 80s and 90s, they're not cloud based. Even if they've like migrated to the clouds, they're still very archaic in the way that they are structured, more as like systems of record rather than something that helps people optimize their decision making and their workflows.
That's very cool. I love to hear founders that were so deep in the problem and they just kind of like it landed in their laps and they had no choice, but they had to solve the problem. So that's
Yeah,
really
I
cool.
mean, I feel like that's how we remain passionate about what we do. Like, supply chain has been under so much scrutiny in the last few years. It's seen so much change, and like we've stuck through it all. Like, sometimes people are like, "You've been doing this for so many years. Like, don't you get tired of it?" And I'm like, "Well, like." It's been my whole career has kind of been leading up to this. So I don't really get tired of it because I love talking to brands, talking to founders, and being like, how do we solve your operational problems?
That's funny. I mean, that's what it's all about, right? Like it's about helping people and when you understand the problem and you have the tools, it's fun to give them a solution that really works.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a whole wave of like new VC backed companies that hopped into supply chain during the pandemic. So everyone was like, turns out supply chain is a big issue. And like everyone that's been in it for a while is like, yes, we've been saying this. And so it was interesting to see that. And it's been, like 3 years since that whole new wave started, and see some of those people like fizzle out because it turns out supply chain is a lot harder than you think it is. It can't be solved just with a few years of quick coding. It really is a complicated beast, and it takes a lot of time, a lot of experience to solve these problems.
Well, I think that's a perfect segue into the next part of the show, and that's you giving us, teaching us a little bit from your experience. And so, prior to hitting record here, we were talking about how you've been heads down refocusing, and I thought that'd be a really great place to kick off because I'd love to know what drove you or got you guys to decide that you needed to refocus your product.
Yeah. So, I mentioned a little bit like we've been around for some time, like 7, almost 8 years. And in startup land, that's like ancient. Like VCs are like, whoa, you're still doing this? Like, and I think, it really comes down to when you look at like other ERP systems, they took like 10 plus years to build. And it's a really difficult problem to solve. And our vision has always been to be an end-to-end supply chain solution. And so we started in the forecasting and planning space. That's where you can leverage machine learning and AI. And that's where you can get a really hard ROI around like your inventory accuracy and savings. But one of the things that we learned throughout the last few years, especially with people overstocking, was like when people are sitting on too much inventory, or when they are thinking about like what are they cutting on their budget that they haven't needed in the past. Like forecasting and planning is still a relatively new tool in the space. And what we found was like when the CFO comes through, like even if the ops team is like, we want this product, we need it, like they're like, well, what did you do before, like the last 4 years? You were still like fine, on spreadsheets. Let's go back to that. And so we actually saw some churn, not because people didn't like our product, because entire ops teams were fired. And all these brands were just like going through a cash crunch. They fired their ops teams because they didn't need inventory, because all the inventory that was supposed to come in 21 came in 22, and they had been sitting on it all the way through 23, and some of them are still sitting on it here in 24. And so I think that was a big shock to the industry. And one of the things that we realized was like, to be able to survive these kind of like shocks in the economy, like we had to be a full-fledged ERP system, and we needed to move that part of the product up sooner. Like incremental improvements to our forecast accuracy were only going to get us so far. Like what people really needed to justify Fuse staying in their stack for the long term was that ERP side. Like no one has been canceling NetSuite, during this time, but they've been canceling all of these, tools that are considered new or extraneous. And so we wanted to make sure we were that like bread and butter tool. And so the last 6 months, we've just been heads down working with customers to basically build like a NetSuite alternative to basically help them do unit costing calculations, inventory allocation, inventory management that we previously had like partnered or sat on top of ERPs, but are now doing ourselves.
So walk me through the process. Like, I think it's always incredible when founders decide to do that pivot and to commit to it and go. What led up to you making that decision, and how did you actually come to the end goal, saying, hey, okay, we're going to actually go heads down and we're going to do this to start working with our customers to get into this ERP space?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the toughest part about that decision is, with the capital markets as they are, if you're not achieving that, 3x year over year growth with profitability, like VCs are not handing that money out unless you're generative AI. And like, we just don't see that use case in our space right now. And so what we had to do was really think about like, okay, with our existing revenue from our existing customers that bought a forecasting and planning product, like being able to say like, hey, we're putting a pause on some of the features on that roadmap, and we're going to be building out this other side of the product. And like for some of them, they were like, we also need that product, so it's okay. But for some of them, it was like, well, that's not what we signed up for. We already have NetSuite. We already have, some archaic system we put in place like 5 years ago. And so, maybe we can convince finance to switch over, maybe we can't. And that was, I think, the scariest part of the decision, was saying like, okay, like we're not going to get new funding. We have to live off our existing ARR. Some of that ARR is going to churn because of this decision. Like, is this still the right decision? And I think, just talking to customers, going with your gut, and just really thinking through like the fundamental, like first principles of the business. Like we were like, okay, this is the right direction for the company long term, but it's extremely scary in the short term. And yeah, I think that was just a lot of like conversations that we had with customers, a lot of conversations we had internally to just really commit to it.
How long did it take for you to make the decision?
I would say, I wish I could say it was like super fast, but it definitely took like at least 2 months to make that decision. It's so hard to let go of revenue that you have and like know that you're not going to have like, because in order to build this product with a lean team, like I had to stop selling. And so even though I feel like the market has been better in 2024 and I could have made a lot more sales, I had to stop selling because like onboarding customers with the old product just didn't make sense anymore. And so it was definitely like a nerve-wracking time, and like a pretty stressful time for us. But ultimately, like I think just continuing to talk to people who are like, yes, we need this product, we want this product, and like continue to believe in that vision has been what's like gotten us through that.
So what's your advice for other founders who, they get the initial indicators that they're going to have to do something drastic like this? What's your advice on, first of all, how to like approach it, and then secondly, how to like stay strong in the decision and go for it?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of approaching it, like just talking to potential customers, making sure that they're willing to actually put out the dollars. Cause like people always say they want things, right? And what we learned with forecasting and planning is like people might want it, but if they're not the ones with the purse strings when times are tough, like it doesn't matter how much your ops person wants it if they're fired like and gone and no one's using the product. And so I think that was the biggest driver there was like, okay, the CFOs are now holding the, we've actually seen a huge shift from people like now hiring fractional operations people, a lot of like former Fuse customers becoming like consultants at multiple brands and then bringing Fuse into those brands as well, which is
Nice.
great. We're actually building up a partner network now as a result of that. But just being able to read that the market has fundamentally changed, and accepting that, which is, I think it just comes down to like talking to your end users and customers because like investors are not going to listen to you. Like other SaaS founders would be like, oh, but what about your metrics? What are your growth? Like, are you going to be able to hit these milestones? And I think at the end of the day, like customer is always right. Like it's the people who are going to be like taking out their wallets, paying for your product that are right, because those are at the end of the day are the ones that are going to show your ARR growth or the ones that are going to justify your existence.
Yeah, and if you're not seeing the growth, right? Like if you're at a stage and you're like, we're not growing the way we believe we should be growing, and we keep hearing this from our customers, you have to listen to them. You have to go back to them. I will say the thing that really jumped out, and I love what you said, they have to be willing to pay because
Yes.
so many people make that mistake where it's like, yeah, so and so said they love it. This is the idea, but they don't have the authority and they don't have the budget. And so then when you build that piece or that feature, or whatever, that it doesn't take off. So I think it's really cool that you guys really spent the time and figured out this is what we have to do, and this is the customers that are willing to pay for it. So I always like to solve
Yeah, I mean,
this.
before
No,
like
go
we go
ahead. Tell
off
me
on that,
more.
I just have like an additional comment because I read this really great article about losing product market fit. Like, I mean, back in 21 when people were like stocked out and they couldn't plan and like we had a huge growth. Like there was a lot of product market fit, but like the market fundamentally changed in the last few years. And I think that acknowledging that is really difficult because when you have product market fit and then you lose it, it's so much more difficult to be like now we're like it's easy to be like, oh no, people will open up their wallets again, we just need to like wait this out. And I think that was kind of really hard to get over. It was like, when you're starting from scratch and you're like, oh, we still don't have product market fit, you can just keep experimenting until you find it. But when you had it and then you lose it because the market has changed and like the people who hope, because before people had budget, like ops people had budget, and like suddenly like there were no ops teams, or the ops team was like, we don't have a budget anymore, finance approves every line item. And you have to start listening to that. Like that's just a fundamental shift and you just have to really go along with it.
That. So I always like to end the show with a offer to you. Is there something that you would like to put out to our network that you'd like some help with?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, going on podcasts, it's really just to connect with other like minded individuals. Like, in terms of SaaS, there's such a wide range of like what kind of SaaS, how you target. So I would say, like, specifically, if you target like mid market commerce, like brands, I'd love to chat because I think it's a really difficult industry to break into. Their margins, they're always looking at their cash flow. But I think, if you win, it's a big win. And so I'd always love to chat with other founders in the space and like band together because I think it's like all of us, like it's the market.
Perfect. I love that one. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show, Rachel, and I really appreciate you sharing with us how you pivoted, and best of luck, and I can't wait to watch you guys grow.
Great. Thanks. It was a pleasure.